So welcome everybody to our alumni speaker series, and it is February 2022. Thrilled to welcome back Dr. Eric Cerino, who is class of 2014, Eastern Connecticut State. And Dr. Cerino will tell us all about his pathway and how he got where he is today and some of his current research. So take it away, Dr. Cerino.
Thank you, Dr. Diller. Hi, everybody. It's so nice to see your names and some faces. And I wish I was there in person, but I'm going to go ahead and get started. And I'm excited to share some of my work with you all. Alrighty. So thanks again, James, for having me. I really do wish I could be there in person, but I'm so comforted and appreciative of your department promoting the health and safety for everybody involved by conducting this virtually. And I'm extremely grateful for the opportunity to have this hour with you all today. When Dr. Diller emailed me telling me about this invited speaker series, I thought it was such a great way to connect current students with alumni. And I can't wait to learn more about you all today and be as helpful as a resource as possible moving forward. I already got to know Candace, and it's exciting to hear the work that Candace is doing with Dr. L already. Today, I'll be talking about my research background and some examples of the current work my lab is pursuing that takes a close look into how development manifests in everyday life. Specifically, I'll discuss the peaks and valleys, the ebbs and flows of cognitive and emotional functioning in daily life. And I'll unpack how what's called an intra-individual variability approach informs our understanding of lifespan development and the ways in which we can optimize cognitive health and well-being in everyday life. So as an outline for today's talk, I wanted to start the hour with sharing some of my experiences in undergrad. I want to share the hands-on learning and research experiences that I was so fortunate to have as an undergrad in your Department of Psych Science. And they really paved the way for my graduate school pursuits, as well as helping me find my passion. And so the ways in which I share my experiences, I want to talk about them in the context of why they were important and meaningful for me. And I hope that you all could find something relevant to pull from that you might be able to apply in your own path as an undergrad in our psych department. So I'll talk about research experiences, internship experiences. And the big takeaway for me as an undergrad at Eastern was making the most of every opportunity I had with faculty members, lab mates, and opportunities that the psych department created for me. And so if there's anything that I've taken away, and I hope you do too, it's that Eastern creates such a wonderful opportunity to get hands-on experiences that could really offer the scaffolding necessary to find the career pursuit you're after. So I'll talk a little bit about what that looked like for me, and then I'll transition to talking about experiences in graduate and postdoctoral training that built on Eastern's foundations. And then I'll share current research and lab activities in my lab at Northern Arizona University. So I started to tell James this. This past week has been emotional for me. It's been this like trip down memory lane, and like I went to my phone's camera roll and I scrolled all the way back, and I looked for pictures of my time at Eastern. I went on my Facebook profile and looked for pictures I've shared, and it just gave me this incredible heartfelt remembrance and reminiscence of my time at Eastern. And so for this portion of the talk, I'm going to illustrate my memories with pictures I've taken along the way. And it all starts in Dr. Lanigan-Leitzel's Laboratory of Cognition, Attention, and Search. And so Candace, this is what I was telling you about before. That picture on the right is what I believe to be the original configuration of the lab in Goddard Hall. And I can't wait to see how it looks now because I've heard about the terrific renovation.
Yeah, it's so different.
Yeah, so different, right? I can't wait to see it. But this was where it all started for me. I took Dr. L's Intro to Psych class, and then I later take like Dr. L's Stats course, Sensation and Perception and Cognitive. But following the Intro to Psych course, I really liked Dr. L's teaching style. I thought her research was really interesting, and I just connected with her and saw if there were opportunities for research in her lab. And Dr. L welcomed me in, and I took research credits in the Laboratory of Cognition, Attention, and Search. And this picture right here was during data collection for a fun study on threat detection in college women. And it's my first exposure to running participants on search related tasks. It was my first experience managing binders pertaining to protocols. And it really gave me hands-on experiences that pertain to Dr. L's research program. And it got me thinking about what I want mine to be one day, perhaps. This picture on the left-hand side was the lab that Dr. L had back in probably 2012, 2013. This is Isaiah, Laura Marie, Meg, and Kirby. And this was just a terrific opportunity, and it's a highlight of what I wanted to share with you all. This is from Psychology Day, a research conference among the Connecticut State University systems. It's annual, and it's a terrific opportunity to get presentation practice and exposure to disseminating the work you've been doing as an undergrad. And so this was just a conference that Dr. L's lab got to share our threat detection research at. And it's just, one of my favorite pictures that documented our work together. From there, Dr. L and I would have one-on-one meetings as well. And I started to try to find my own path and what I found to be interesting for my line of research. And I found cognitive research fascinating, but I wanted to study it in the context of older adulthood. I wanted to apply it in some capacity to aging-related research questions. And so the more Dr. L and I talked, the more we realized we should find an internship opportunity to pursue. And so in a summer between sophomore and junior year, I pursued an internship at a community center for older adults near my hometown, and Dr. L supervised it. So it was this like transition from research experience to internship experience early on. And I fell in love with it. Like Dr. L and I had like a summer-long internship research credit set up, and we talked shop on experiences and how I might be able to apply it in my career down the road. It was really helpful to help formulate what path I might be interested in pursuing. And it dawned on us that, the cognitive lab helped illustrate my interest in studying particular processes, but it would be valuable to seek out additional training and additional mentorship from other people with more of a developmental background too. And so with that, Dr. L and I figured, this would be a terrific opportunity to loop in Dr. Leszczynski and see if Dr. Leszczynski would be able to offer a bit of training and mentorship as well. And Dr. Leszczynski's Lifespan Developmental Psych Lab was just the perfect complement to what I was learning in Dr. L's lab. This was my opportunity to train under an individual with expertise in aging-related work and combine expertise with Dr. L on studying cognition in the context of lifespan development. And so this picture was from work that Dr. Leszczynski and I did at the internship site that Dr. L supervised initially. So I went back to that internship site and I collected data on the community center members. And we had this great study design, and we looked at the relationships between subjective age, level of activity at the center, and depressive symptoms in older adults. And we got to share this work at a research conference called Posters on the Hill, sponsored by NCUR. That's National Council on Undergraduate Research. And it's just this awesome conference, national opportunity to communicate your findings with congresspeople at Capitol Hill, Washington, D.C. And like it was just a tremendous experience for Dr. Leszczynski and I to think about practical utility of our work and like really identify the value of studying psychosocial and cognitive factors in older adulthood. This image right here of the Psychi Journal of Psychological Research is a big part of what I wanted to share with you all. So anyone who is a member of the Psychi International Honor Society in Psychology can submit their undergraduate research to this journal. Dr. Leszczynski and I had a terrific experience submitting this work that we presented at Posters on the Hill to this journal. And I recommend all of you that are Psychi members to consider this as a possible outlet. The editor, the peer reviewers, and the mission of this journal outlet is committed to training and developing research and writing skills. And so it was a terrific experience from start to finish, where Dr. Leszczynski and I got to publish our work. So beyond the research experiences and internship experiences, the core curriculum of your department psych major was pivotal and instrumental in gaining the necessary statistical and research training to pursue graduate work. I took Dr. Lanigan-Leitzel's statistics course as the initial part of a sequence into research methods 1 and 2. Dr. Escoto taught research method 1, and Dr. Salters-Pedneault taught research methods 2. And when I say I would not have ever been able to learn the research process nearly as well without them, I am not kidding. These two individuals paved the way for my love for research and the mentorship to give me confidence to pursue it. Dr. Escoto helped in the formulation and idea generation of the project, and then in research methods 2 and beyond, Dr. Salters-Pedneault just was this leader and mentor I am so fortunate to have, because she gave me confidence to transition the research methods project into a publication. And so we worked on developing the research methods project to submit to Psychi Journal of Psychological Research, and was able to get that published as well. And so just looking to these role models and faculty members for guidance, because they're truly incredible at providing these opportunities for success. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about another internship that I pursued. Senior year, Dr. Leszczynski and I took stock of experiences I've had so far, and I loved working at the Community Center for Older Adults. Got to engage with individuals from various backgrounds. They were cognitively healthy individuals and community dwelling in nature. I've always wanted to apply and pursue my interest in cognitive work to pathological aging. And Eastern Connecticut State has a terrific relationship with the regional office at the Alzheimer's Association in Norwich, Connecticut. And Dr. Leszczynski supervised a research internship at the Alzheimer's Association my final semester at Eastern. And these two individuals right here, Stacy Batty Chavez and Christine Johnson, are two of the nicest, warmest, and most caring individuals you'll ever meet. These were the site directors at the internship site that I was able to pursue. While I was there, Christine, Dr. Leszczynski, and I developed an early stage Alzheimer's social engagement program where we hired a Tai Chi instructor to provide Tai Chi exercise, relaxation, and meditation for one segment of the engagement program. And then Christine Johnson and I delivered an education and resource-based intervention on the other side of it. And the goal of it was to provide the necessary resources and information that individuals diagnosed with a dementia and their care partners need in the context of a peaceful and more realistic way of taking stock of the harsh realities that dementia can create. And so it was in this program that I developed relationships that I want to talk a little bit about next. Perhaps the most important experience or the most meaningful experience for me was getting to develop relationships with individuals with dementia and their care partners. The person you're looking at right here in the helmet is named Bill West. I met Bill when he was 67 years old in 2014. I met him in the early stages of a recent diagnosis he received of mixed dementia. Mixed dementia is a combination of multiple types of dementia. In Bill's case, this was a combination of Alzheimer's disease and Lewy bodies disease. And so the pictures here are a social engagement program I made in the summer of 2014. I wanted to find a way to stimulate and engage the senses for individuals with dementia. And I thought, what better a sport to pick than baseball, where you think about the sound of the crack of a wooden bat, the smell of a leather glove, the smell of freshly cut grass. This is an opportunity to provide social engagement and trigger reminiscence and fond memories of prior days. And so I got to work with Bill and many other participants that I met in the Tai Chi program in this baseball program too. And so they met him in 2014, and my wife and I was able to stay quite close with Bill for the remainder of his life and continue to stay close with his wonderful wife, Jeannie. And so I was thinking about how to communicate this type of relationship. And I think including these pictures are just as important as including the pictures in the preceding slide. The relationships I was able to develop in this research internship were lifelong. And my wife and I were able to maintain our connection and friendship with Bill across the deteriorating stages of mixed dementia. And so these are pictures taken from the last time my wife and I got to visit and see Bill in September of 2019. You can see the transitions into the later stages of mixed dementia. Symptomatology of Lewy bodies dementia tends to involve Parkinsonian symptoms of muscle rigidity and stiffness. Bill required round-the-clock care, and his incredible wife was the primary care partner for the entirety of Bill's experience with dementia. And so I include these pictures because it's friendships like this that I was able to make from my time at Eastern, and I'll always hold them dear to my heart and share with current students, because I hope the same can happen for each and every one of you. These are incredible people that live in our community, and Eastern connects people to others that way. And so, yeah, this was just an incredible moment for my wife and I to see Bill one last time. We brought the helmet he wore, and he got to keep it. But I just hope that, these types of experiences that I'm sharing with you today can influence or motivate you all to reflect on what makes you tick and what makes you wake up every day, and identify ways to brainstorm with faculty to find that calling from there. All right, so with that, I wanted to transition into talking about how those experiences at Eastern shaped my passion and pursuit of research pertaining to cognitive health and well-being in everyday life. And so I'm going to take a deep dive now into talking about the peaks and valleys and the ebbs and flows of cognitive and emotional functioning in daily life. And I'll share the different perspectives that I've gained along the way that I'm helping my lab move forward with every day. So as a lifespan developmental psychologist, I'm really interested in how individuals change across different time scales. And so developmental change can be broadly defined as relatively permanent, systematic, or organized successive changes within the person across the lifespan. And this change is made possible through coactive, multi-directional person-context relationships. Now, in general, my research is informed by lifespan theory's tenet that development can be optimized by maximizing gains and minimizing losses. As a developmental psychologist, I focus my research program on ways in which we may optimize cognitive health and aging amidst age-related and in some cases pathological losses or declines. Applying a developmental lens to cognitive aging facilitates the study of theoretically and practically meaningful change and variability in cognitive functions across the lifespan. Now, although cognitive decline is typical with age, the rate of change and the areas of cognition that show change varies widely within and across individuals. This gain-loss dynamic suggests an individual's cognitive aging trajectory depends on a multitude of individual and environmental factors. I think this figure helps illustrate how multiple timescales of cognitive change are at play when trying to characterize these cognitive aging trajectories. First, take a look at the bolded declining arrow depicting a long-term trajectory across decades of the adult lifespan. You can see that there's a general decline in cognitive function across the lifespan, which may be attributed to aging-related or pathological cortical thinning or amyloid burden, for example. Now, developmental psychologists are typically interested in these long-term trajectories, but as you can see in the green dotted trend that fluctuates around this long-term trajectory, cognitive aging doesn't exhibit this clear pattern. There are peaks and valleys or ebbs and flows in cognitive function from week to week or month to month that may be due to chronic levels of stress, as one example. A deep dive into the ways in which cognitive function fluctuates within a given day or from day to day offers a way to better understand what might be contributing to this variation. And as you can see in the zoomed in depiction of short-term variability in cognition across hours and days on the left-hand side here, cognitive function can fluctuate within a day or from day to day that might be due to momentary experiences of stress, as one example. We know from foundational work by John Nesselrode that we're not static sets of relatively fixed values. Rather, we exist as humans as complex dynamic systems, right? Many of which, like emotion and cognition, are in constant flux. Studying this short-term variation and applying an intra-individual variability approach allows you to examine how, when, and perhaps why the individual changes across the adult lifespan. And it can inform ways in which emotional and cognitive functioning in daily life contribute to normative or pathological cognitive aging. So as a way of putting my research in context, I wanted to start by identifying the significant public health issue we face globally as neurodegenerative dementias are on the rise. This is data from an Alzheimer's Association's recent national report showing more than 6 million Americans currently living with Alzheimer's disease. And this number is expected to considerably rise in the years to come, really impeding health and well-being for individuals diagnosed, their care partners, families, and communities. And this issue makes studying early indicators of age-related cognitive decline and pathological impairment imperative to inform approaches that optimize cognitive health and reduce cognitive decline across the lifespan. And it makes it critical to think about at what point in this disease progression would public health efforts or interventions be most advantageous? The focus of this talk is on the first and the middle stages of this flow diagram right here. The first stage being community-dwelling older adults without objective cognitive impairment. This stage includes individuals who are cognitively healthy or preclinical individuals that do not show any symptoms of objective impairment. And the middle stage of this flow diagram right here consists of individuals classified with mild cognitive impairment, or MCI. Mild cognitive impairment is a transitional stage comprised of mild impairments in objective performance across multiple domains. And importantly, people with mild cognitive impairment are at an elevated risk for Alzheimer's disease and related dementias. So early detection of MCI during the pre-symptomatic phase of dementia is particularly important for maximizing effectiveness of clinical trials, as well as efficiency of resource allocation. So I wanted to introduce my research program by talking about how my graduate and my postdoctoral training built on my experiences at Eastern. Working closely with Drs. Lanigan, Leitzel, and Leszczynski helped me think about cognitive functioning in the context of lifespan development, and with a particular interest in work with older adults. I built on this in my graduate and postdoctoral work. I've received training in integrative developmental science since my graduate training at Oregon State University. There, I was part of an interdisciplinary National Science Foundation IGERT traineeship in aging sciences. My PhD is in human development and family studies with a specialization in adult development and aging. And through mentorship by Karen Hooker and Rob Stosky, I gained experience in taking an intra-individual variability approach to the study of lifespan development. In my graduate training, I learned how to apply this approach to aging-related research questions using intensive repeated measurement techniques. So I wanted to build my content expertise and methodological toolkit by pursuing a postdoc that provided research opportunities and mentorship on the study design and analysis of what's called ecological momentary assessments. I was able to do this through a National Institutes of Health T32 postdoctoral fellowship at Penn State. With training under Marty Selinsky, Dave Almeida, and Josh Smythe, my postdoctoral years at Penn State provided me with 2 years of training in EMA techniques, including protocols that embed mobile cognitive testing and familiarity with clinical samples across cognitive and health statuses. So my research program is really situated within adult development and aging, and it takes an intra-individual variability approach to study cognitive health and aging. And remember, cognitive aging can be defined as both the scientific field and the pluralistic phenomenon of theoretically and practically meaningful change in variability across the lifespan. There are many ways we can think about and approach cognitive aging, and I think this picture on the left-hand side helps characterize its complexity well. It can be perceived as between-person, individual differences in cognitive health, with the individual with green leaves suggesting best health. At the same time, it can be perceived as the same individual facing age-related or pathological declines over time. Taking an intra-individual variability approach, or IIV approach, allows you to examine both of these within and between person differences. And I'm particularly interested in studying the ways in which psychosocial factors like personality, stress, and emotion influence these differences or co-vary with them over time. The remainder of this talk will involve applying this kind of approach via intensive repeated measurements, which align to coactive dynamic phenomena like psychosocial factors in cognition. And all of these interests are dedicated to a long-term research goal, and that is to use intensive repeated measurement techniques to advance dementia screening efforts and inform the development of tailored approaches for optimizing cognitive health in older adults. So in today's talk, I will describe 3 pieces of work. First, some prior work that demonstrates systematic links between emotional functioning and cognitive health in everyday life. Then I'll describe some current work identifying variability in mobile cognitive test performance as a sensitive marker of mild cognitive impairment. And finally, I'll describe current projects being pursued by my students in my lab at NAU. Now, as we focus on this first portion of the talk, The interindividual variability approach taken in my research involves studying that meaningful short-term variation within people that allow us to examine when and perhaps why people change over time. So why study IIV? Well, I'm interested in it for two main reasons. First, it can confound and obscure developmentally relevant change. For example, if we measure cognitive function in a person just once at baseline, we might get them on a bad day and underestimate their true or typical functioning. This error is compounded in longitudinal work, where we might retest that person a year later and get them on a good day, leading us to incorrectly conclude improvement in cognitive function when they're actually declining. Averaging across multiple assessments at baseline and follow-up would allow you to account for that variation. And importantly, taking an interindividual variability approach can involve examining the context or the characteristics that may be influencing these peaks and valleys or ebbs and flows in cognition, which provides a way to better understand what may be systematically related to the short-term variation. And second, the magnitude and the patterning of interindividual variability can reveal important features of cognitive performance and how cognition changes with age. A well-known index of short-term variation in cognitive performance is known as response time inconsistency, or RTI. Now, as opposed to averaging responses across trials, RTI is defined as trial-to-trial fluctuations within a speeded response time task. These two panels on the lower right of the screen here depict this trial-level short-term variation, distinguishing between healthy adults and those with preclinical dementia. You see the orange panel shows individuals with preclinical dementia having far greater variability than the healthy controls in blue, thus identifying trial-level variability as an emerging robust predictor of cognitive decline in older adulthood. Now, using this index of cognitive health, of fluctuations in speeded response times, one line of my research focuses on the psychological determinants of this trial-level variability in cognitive function. Understanding the psychological correlates that may be co-varying with variability within a day or from day to day really provides pivotal info for characterizing the moments that confer greatest risk to heightened cognitive variability or poorer cognitive performance. We've examined cognitive variability in multiple intensive repeated measurement designs to this day. We've demonstrated that higher levels of cognitive variability is systematically related to multiple psychological factors in several papers, including daily stress processes, negative affect, and control beliefs. So I'd like to focus on our work on negative affect for a moment. So this is work from my dissertation at Oregon State. We were really interested in determining if negative affect in everyday life influences cognitive variability over micro daily sessions, and if these associations may exhibit aging-related change. And so our paper published in International Journal of Behavioral Development set out to focus on these nuances. We used data from a measurement burst study spanning 2 years of assessment. Within a 14-day time period, participants were assessed on 6 daily sessions where they completed measures of affect and cognitive tests. This protocol was administered every 6 months for 2 years, generating 5 total bursts of data. A sample comprised of 116 community-dwelling older adults with a mean age of 80. Now, the goal of this study was to test the hypothesis that higher levels of negative affect co-vary with elevated cognitive variability within persons. And we also explored whether these associations change as individuals age across the 2 years of assessment. Affect was measured at each session using a 5-point scale, and it assessed the intensity of emotions right now at this very moment for both negative affect and positive affect. I'll just focus on the findings with negative affect today. because there wasn't an association found between positive affect and response time and consistency. So we used a response time-based one-back working memory task to operationalize cognitive variability in this dissertation. So this is a task that has an attentional demand integrated into it. Participants were instructed to indicate whether current digit stimuli on the screen was the same or different than the digit stimulus one screen back. We used this for our operationalization of cognitive variability. So to quantify this variability, we used what's called a residualized intra-individual standard deviation to quantify the amount of variability from trial to trial at each assessment session. This particular quantification adjusts for between and within person confounds like learning and practice trends. When I show you some results, higher values on this residualized ISD reflect greater cognitive variability, more variability. So the primary finding for the study included significant aging-related changes in the within-person association between negative affect and trial-level variability. The bars with standard errors reflect direction and magnitude of the within-person association at each burst of assessment. Take a look at these first two bursts of assessment here. On sessions when participants reported higher negative affect than usual, they exhibited significantly higher variability. But when you look at the pattern of association across 2 years, this association decreased in magnitude over time, ultimately resulting in decreased trial level variability 2 years later. So while speculative, it's possible that participants engaged in developmental regulation processes or strategies that allowed them to minimize the detrimental influence of negative affect over time, resulting in more efficient processing at the final burst of assessment. So there's been accumulating evidence now suggesting that cognitive variability is important. That variability isn't just noise, but is rather an indicator of short-term attentional lapses, as well as more durable cognitive decline and impairment. My research program has helped demonstrate that this variability is systematically related to other psychological processes within people at a momentary and daily level. A major motivation for this work, then, is to begin to understand what's leading to these upticks in variability in everyday life. Might there be modifiable emotional factors that flare up in certain contexts throughout the day that lead to these ebbs and flows in cognitive performance? My past work suggests that that may be the case. So this past work focused on variability that occurs in a testing session in a research office. Our most recent work pursues a more ecologically valid approach to studying the clinical utility of performance variability in everyday life. And so the work I'll share now employs a digital health approach with ecological momentary assessments. We're using frequent, brief assessments of cognitive performance in everyday life using smartphones. And so we had this general study aim in this work where we wanted to explore the potential utility of variability in mobile cognitive performance as a potential sensitive marker for distinguishing individuals with mild cognitive impairment from those who are cognitively unimpaired. And we looked at this across variability indices in multiple domains of cognitive performance. So we had this general research question: does variability in performance on mobile cognitive tests differ for individuals with mild cognitive impairment and those who are cognitively unimpaired? And we had this general hypothesis that individuals with MCI will exhibit greater variability in performance compared to those who were cognitively unimpaired. So to test these hypotheses, we used data from an ongoing study called the Einstein Aging Study, or EAS. This is an ongoing measurement burst longitudinal study of early detection of cognitive impairment in community-dwelling older adults from the Bronx, New York. Participants completed a self-initiated morning and end-of-day survey, as well as 4 semi-random beeped assessment occasions during the day, taking around 20 to 25 minutes total per day. Each participant was asked to complete up to 96 measurement occasions across the 16 days. So that's 16 morning, 64 beeped, and 16 end-of-day assessments. The diverse sample is comprised of 312 community-dwelling older adults. Average age was 77 years old, and the sample was 47% white, 38% black, and primarily female. Now, of these 312 individuals, 100 were classified with mild cognitive impairment using clinic-based neuropsych test performance in line with Jack Bondi algorithmic criteria. So these are screenshots of the mobile cognitive tests. These are tests that are in development right now. They're in validation stages at Penn State University and in collaboration with many other researchers across the country. Marty Leszczynski is behind developing the cognitive protocols and brief mobile cognitive assessments that have been used in this study. There are 3 tests that we used for this study in particular. We have a measure of processing speed in the test of symbol match. This is where participants were asked to compare 3 symbol pairs at the top of the screen with 2 symbol pairs at the bottom of the screen and decide as quickly and accurately as possible which of the bottom screen pairs matches the top screen pair. We have color shapes, which is a test of visual short-term memory binding. Participants are asked to memorize the shapes and colors of 3 different polygons for 3 seconds. The 3 polygons are then removed from the screen and redisplayed at different locations, either having the same or different colors. Participants are then asked to decide whether the combo of colors and shapes are the same or different. And finally, we have a test of spatial working memory called grid memory. There's an initial brief study phase where participants are asked to memorize the location of 3 dots presented at random locations on a 5x5 grid for 3 seconds. And then after a visual distractor phase, participants are asked to recall the location of each dot during the study phase. So I want to get to the primary results here. What we were interested in looking at is the extent to which there were cognitive status differences in not only variability in performance, but also comparing those patterns to cognitive status differences in mean performance as well. So we're looking at across 96 different assessment occasions for these individuals. We're operationalizing variability within day, so assessment to assessment within a day. We're also operationalizing variability across days, so how you perform on Monday compared to Tuesday, compared to Wednesday, compared to Thursday. And we're also comparing those indices of variability to the general approach in cognitive aging research, looking at cognitive status differences in a measure of central tendency, just general mean performance across the 96 assessments. So for today's talk, I just want to draw your attention to these within-day variability patterns. Individuals with mild cognitive impairment exhibited significantly greater within-day variability on 2 of the 3 mobile cognitive tests. This is one of them right here. Compared to cognitively unimpaired participants, individuals with mild cognitive impairment were significantly more variable in the symbol match test of processing speed. You can see here just comparing the residual variance estimates, where higher values on this y-axis would indicate more assessment to assessment variability. The red striped bar of MCI participants are exhibiting significantly greater variability than cognitively unimpaired folks. And people with MCI were also more variable on the test of visual short-term memory binding, that color shapes test. see that same pattern emerge where individuals with MCI are being more variable in their performance on color shapes. Interestingly, no cognitive status differences emerged in within-day variability for spatial working memory. So you see here, there's a non-significant difference between performance and variability in performance among those who are cognitively unimpaired and those classified as mild cognitive impairment. So in taking stock of, what this study might start to inform and how we may be able to leverage these findings for clinical utility down the road, this is really the first examination of cognitive status differences in the variability in mobile cognitive test performance across assessment sessions that are nested within days in naturalistic settings. And what we saw was that mobile cognitive tests within an EMA protocol can be used to evaluate cognitive status differences. And that variability from assessment to assessment within a day is indeed sensitive to MCI. So what we're thinking and what we are poised and looking forward to testing in future work is that individuals with mild cognitive impairment may have compromised neurological capacity to consistently perform tasks throughout the day that require speeded responses and memory binding, as driven by the status differences in the symbol match and color shapes tasks. Right. So with that, I wanted to share a little bit more about my lab at Northern Arizona University. So these are my terrific students. I have 4 undergraduate and 2 graduate students. Alicia Archibicu, Yesenia Cruz Carrillo, Lenora Otero Strong, and Brady McClaskey are my wonderful undergraduate students. And Claire Groves and Laura Klipax are my awesome master's students. And together, we're eager and looking forward to pursuing aging-related questions at NAU, but not just from a research sense. We're really eager to promote age inclusivity in our lab and in our community and have it make an impact on identifying ways we all can work towards optimizing health and well-being for all individuals across the lifespan. I need to brag and just absolutely adore the logo that my student Lenore Otero Strong created. She did just a phenomenal job at characterizing a lot of the themes we talk about in our work, right? Like there's this nonlinear path of lifespan development across peaks and valleys as we grow older. And you see not one individual has the same trajectory as another. And so studying cognitive health requires that within-person approach to looking at each individual's trajectory over time. I love trees in my metaphors of lifespan development, so Lenore hit that nail on the head. And this was all Lenore's idea. It's just incredible, but we're going to make this bolder. But Lenore had the idea of putting a clock within the sun. And I think it's such a beautiful way to recognize the diurnal influence of time of day and the value of studying people in everyday life, putting people's development under a microscope throughout the day. So they're just tremendous individuals that I'm so proud of the work they're doing. I just want to share a little bit about the projects they have up their sleeves. So Claire Groves is a second-year individual who, in our master's program, pursuing a terrific thesis on daily associations between stress and physical activity among working parents. And she was just accepted into a tremendous PhD program at UC Merced. So we're all really pumped for her and proud of her. I have a first-year master's student, Laura Klipax, that is really interested in dynamic indices of cognitive health. And Laura wants to apply in her master's thesis that same kind of intra-individual variability approach I talked about in cognitive performance, only look at it in older adults with ADHD. I think it's a fascinating gap that Laura's going to fill, and tremendous work that's needed. And then my undergraduates are working together in a bit of an undergraduate research team. They were really interested in looking at the role that COVID-19 psychosocial factors and mental health variables play in our cognitive health. And so they're looking at associations among COVID-19 related worries and positive experiences and memory function in older adults. And they're really thinking that social support could be a crucial moderator of these associations. And so these are the projects that are happening in my lab, and just really proud of all of their hard work along the way. And so I just want to end. This is my last picture I took at my time at Eastern. James, there you are. And it just makes me think about the primary theme I wanted to share with you all today. And every time I look at this picture, I think about the selfless commitment that each and every one of the faculty members at Eastern has for their students. And like you all, whether it's in a Zoom room or a classroom, are surrounded by a department that's really committed to supporting students and creating opportunities for your success. So you're in terrific hands. Yeah, I'm just grateful that I get to be an alumni and someone that may be able to provide support and resources along the way for you all as well. So with that, I want to stop sharing and just thank you all so much for listening. Here's my email if you ever want to talk to me about anything. Always available to talk. So thank you all so much for your attention, and happy to keep conversations going for however long you'd like.
Thank you so much, Eric. That was really great, and it's really exciting to see our alums go off and do really amazing work and important work with this great application and implications, especially with our aging society now. Any questions from any of the students here?
Sure. This is such inspiring research, by the way. I did want to ask if you have any hypotheses, why is neurodegenerative dementias on the rise? I thought that was really interesting, and I wondered if you had any ideas why that was the case.
Yeah, Candace, that's a great question. And thinking about it, Dr. Diller just suggested a possible reason, right? With life expectancy increasing and population aging emerging as more prominent in our society, we have more individuals that are growing older and living longer. And so Alzheimer's disease and related dementias are age-related pathologies. With increased age, you are at increased risk of developing neurodegenerative conditions. And so that's a driving force in possible rates increasing. The other piece that's a bit more relevant to the work I shared today, there's been terrific theorizing around the roles that psychosocial resources play in our cognitive health as we grow older. And I'm really interested in the roles that anxiety and depression and perseverative cognition may play in cognitive health. And there's some theories that are going around that have been around since the late 90s that hypothesize why anxiety and depression may be relevant to understanding trajectories of cognitive health. One is called the resource allocation model. And individuals theorize that a depressed state or depressed mood can deplete the necessary attentional resources we need to attend to relevant information and encode it. And so continued or chronic depressive symptoms could contribute to accelerated pathological aging. In terms of anxiety, the processing efficiency theory is relevant because researchers have tested the extent to which an anxious mind could usurp and fill, clouding the head of capacity to attend to the necessary stimuli. And so over time, these are mental health predictors and correlates that could play a role in how we think about trajectories of cognitive aging. There's a new theory that's gaining traction called the cognitive debt hypothesis. And this is explicitly thinking about mechanisms of those associations we just talked about. It looks like perseverative cognition. So like having traces of thought that you just can't get out of your head serves as a key mechanism of understanding how anxiousness or worry could contribute to cognitive function. And so I think, when we look at possible reasons and try to predict elements of transition to cognitive impairment, I think it's just as important to look at the psychosocial attributes and characteristics of the individual, while also recognizing the pivotal role that age plays.
That is so interesting. I especially think that the processing efficiency theory, learning about how that affects aging is going to help us learn how our cognitive capacity affects just like daily life for everyone. That's really cool.
Yeah, that's a great call, Candace. So, thinking about what that means for emotional development in older adulthood is relevant too, right? Because like you could pull developmental perspectives like socio-emotional selectivity theory and strength and vulnerability integration models to this. Older individuals tend to be better than younger individuals at emotion regulation and coping strategies. And so taking stock of what kinds of strategies and coping mechanisms are at play could serve as protective factors that we can try to boost up, to try to course correct or optimize cognitive aging trajectories over time.
Really interesting. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Candace.
I'll ask a question. Dr. Cerino, are you accepting graduate students?
Say that again, James?
Are you accepting graduate students?
Yes. Yeah, I'm accepting graduate students. Yeah, we have a terrific master's program at NAU. It's a 2-year program, and it works towards helping individuals gain research experience to transition to PhD programs from there. And we're currently taking stock. This will probably be a few years in the making, but we're taking stock on how to retool processes in our program to also facilitate community engagement and service-related work that our grad students can pursue and identify careers from there as well. So yeah, looking forward to developing my lab in years to come.
That's excellent. Candace, I don't know your research interests, but you might want to keep that in mind. Any other questions?
Hi, thank you. I have another one if I can. I just wanted to know if you had any like specific advice you could give to, students like me who are looking into going into graduate school and applying for PhD programs soon, especially considering you have a particularly productive and rich academic history at Eastern, and unfortunately, I do not have as much as much experience with internships and research assistantships. I have a little bit, but not so much. Do you have any advice?
Oh, Candace, that's such a great question and just conversation to have, because each person's path looks very different from one another, right? Like this was one example of the path I was very fortunate to have with Dr. L and Dr. Leszczynski. What's really important to recognize is that there's always opportunity to gain experience. And part of the value of a discussion and a talk like this today is for us to brainstorm ways to seek out more opportunities from here, and I think, one way to think about that is reaching out to faculty or having consistent conversations with Dr. L about how to continue your exposure to research so that you can play that up as you talk to potential PhD programs and PhD advisors. My biggest advice that I didn't share today so far, one piece that I would really recommend is consistently talking to your advisor about potential programs to apply for. And then once you have those programs in mind, reach out to your potential doctoral advisor or master's advisor and start a line of communication with them that expresses your enthusiasm, shares your background and past experiences, and puts your name on their radar so that when you do apply to a PhD program, you stand out from the others because the PhD advisor could do a quick search on their Outlook app and see your name pop up, whereas that may not happen for every other candidate. And so I think that's another, useful way to find out ways you can stand out from the pack.
That's really good advice. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for asking.
So I kind of have a question similar to hers, but more so, what if you don't want necessarily a master's or a PhD, but like what careers do you see in gerontology?
Oh, that's awesome, Marta. Thank you for asking it because I had my own soul searching to do when I was at Eastern. I fell in love with the internship experiences I had at the Community Center for Older Adults near my hometown, as well as the Alzheimer's Association. Both of those experiences could have materialized into potential employment outside of additional education. So to answer your question, like two examples would be working at a community center for older adults as a program director or instructor or various capacities and responsibilities necessary. The Alzheimer's Association is a terrific nonprofit that seeks eager individuals with bachelor's degrees to assist in a number of programs they offer for the community. And so I think those are two solid opportunities in the context of gerontology and the aging community. You could apply that to nursing care, memory care, and institutionalized settings as well. But I think those would all be interesting and ideal avenues to pursue as you're thinking about alternative career opportunities from there.
Yeah, thank you. For you, like, did you just go directly into your master's or did you take a break or anything?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there is value in both pursuits. So I had a lot of discussion with Dr. L and Dr. Leszczynski on what made the most sense for my path. And I was very fortunate to identify an avenue that was possible. What I did was apply broadly to many PhD programs and many master's programs. And I didn't know if I'd get into a PhD program. I was nervous about how competitive it was. I was nervous about how competitive my application would be. That's why, my advice to Candace is to connect with potential advisors so soon. But the reason behind that is I applied broadly to give myself as good a chance as possible in getting accepted into one. I was very confident and secure in that path. I knew I wanted to pursue graduate school and I wanted to try my hand at applying there. If I was not so sure, the best approach for me could very well have been to take a gap year. And I could have absolutely envisioned continuing to work at the Alzheimer's Association to continue my experiences and continue my work life, right? So it's important to remember that my path is one way and another person's path is just as valid and can look entirely different. I tried and applied to a lot of PhD programs. I did not get into all of them. I applied to West Virginia University, North Carolina State, University of Florida, Bowling Green, and Oregon State. And all of those applications were informed by discussions with Dr. L and Dr. Leszczynski, trying to see if I could be a good fit. And so just through a lot of discussion, I mustered up enough confidence and belief in trying. That's how I would organize the answer, Larda, because if at any time it looked as though it wasn't a good fit, the gap year or gap years or alternative career entirely would have been just as fulfilling for me. And so I hope that that helps you think about your path, because there's so many opportunities after Eastern, and they could look like grad school, and they could look like work. It really could look very different, and happy to keep talking about ideas with you moving forward.
Yeah, thank you. Like just today, I picked up a pamphlet from Dr. Leszczynski of like Central's graduate certificate, like
Nice.
for gerontology.
That's awesome. Okay, so like that's a great example. Yeah, highly encourage that.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from anybody? Go ahead and stop the recording. Thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Thank you all so much for your attention and terrific questions.